So, Jailphase, I heard that you were going to do another Halo Wars 2 thoughts about UNSC units, right? Yeah. I was gonna get to that eventually. Fucking 2 months later. Hey guys, it's Jailphase, back into it. I know, hearing my voice has got to be like seeing an eclipse by now. And luckily, I'm still staying on top of stuff, just had some minor complications, you know. Again, I don't get paid off of YouTube. I gotta work and gotta pay bills, all that stuff.
Optics, totally fried. And let's not even talk about the power supply. You know how expensive this gear is, son?
Everyday lives of a horrible adult and all. But luckily, I was able to get things fixed up. I had to get my internet changed because of some issues of paying more and getting less for your buck, as they call. And of course, getting my software fixed up because there were a few viruses that I had to fight against for a good couple of weeks.
Not again.
But luckily now all that's finally been taken care of. Changed my internet. Wasn't that hard.
Nobody gets in and out of here. Nobody!
Pretty simple process. Nothing too complicated. Everything went pretty clean.
You guys think I'm crazy? Well, that's fine.
And the people there were fairly reasonable. They understood completely where I was coming from.
Okay, Blair. Come on, man. You don't want to hurt anybody.
I'll kill you!
Other than that, now we can get back to the more important things. Halo Wars 2 and the units. Now, I've already seen quite a few videos already. I've been keeping track. And obviously, there's no more wish list. There are some solid units on here now. And I guess, who knows, you might see some more ones. Again, now that they're doing the same routine with Halo Wars 1, which is each faction will have 3 leader classes, which is to be expected. We'll be finding some different units, as each leader will not have all the same units. That's one of the reasons why they made it like that. So I guess we'll do our talk and thoughts about the units. And I'm going to keep it short as possible. No more like talk about upgrades or their capabilities a whole lot. Just mainly now what they are and what they can do. And what maybe they should be doing, I guess, is what I probably would go for. As some units I did find a little questionable. Others seem to fit fairly well and don't need any changes. But I'll talk through the list as always. And of course now we'll be beginning. Of course the first vehicle units, because we're doing vehicles now, the Jackrabbit, of course. Now, the Jackrabbit obviously was going to be used as a scouting unit, and not much more. And even if it was fully upgraded, the downside is it just doesn't really play a part in warfare. Unless they increase the unit cap, I guess. Maybe it might still be useful, as it is one of the fastest vehicles. Not entirely, though. I think a Warthog could probably catch up to him. I was surprised that the Warthog wasn't going to be used as the scouting unit. It was always was the main scouting unit, but I guess they wanted to try to find something more along the lines of substitute, like the Mongoose, I guess. But in the long run, you would expect these units would play a bigger part at some point, depending on how much they are upgraded. Looked exactly on the principles of this unit, but maybe a few things would be nice. And that is, maybe just because it's a weak unit doesn't mean maybe it serves a stronger usage in other means. Like maybe it could be a detector unit. As that there are units that cloak themselves. There's units that hide themselves up, and that would require at least some kind of special ability or a unit that is able to detect hidden units. And I think the Jackrabbit could probably fit right about there at that list, as that would be like a special annoyance for any enemy oncoming players that try to use cloak units to scout near enemy positions or bases, I would say. That would definitely require a scouting unit of some kind that is fast, able to look around, look for units that you know that are hidden somewhere. That would be probably his best bet. Now, I don't know if a Jackrabbit could be used as like a tugging unit or something. I don't know, like a like a troll boat or something. Something that would like what they do like on Halo Wars with that elephant dragging that core, that engine core stuff. But no. I think we won't complicate it anymore because we want to make sure this is like decent and fast-paced. And I think we'll just leave that one out. But other than that, I think the Jackrabbit would be fairly useful if it had some sort of detectability. That would make it at least a little more of a unit that would still be used in the long run, even after when players have managed to upgrade themselves to their full capacity. Other than that, unless that is put on there, I would doubt players will be using this type of unit often, unfortunately. Moving on, of course, to the Warthog. Now, the Warthog doesn't look like it really needs any changes. Still a very fast-paced vehicle. Got its usual upgrade with the gas cannon now. Starts off with the chain gun, moves up with something more better. And still rams units, which is a nice little feature. That's all good. Don't know if he gets like a side guy with a rocket launcher, but who knows? Maybe a different leader class will provide something like that. And as time progresses and you get hold of more upgrades and new units, obviously the Warthog might be used as the new scouting unit. However, it probably won't have a detection system as it has sacrificed probably those type of abilities for more offensive. And no doubt a good number of Warthogs could even drop plenty of Wasps or Banshees because they will shoot in the air. And let's be realistic, a gas cannon could certainly shred up an aircraft for sure. That was definitely one of its specialties. Besides one hit killing small infantry units. But who knows? Maybe there'll be more surprises for this vehicle than just its usual constant offensive capabilities and also moving around the map pretty damn fast. Now, moving on to the Wolverine, the anti-air vehicle. Now, when I played the UNSC, I have been busting these units out before, and they're not bad. They still serve kind of their effectiveness, but I would really prefer that these type of units just had a little more kick. Again, these type of units can attack small ground units just with like a different type of weaponry style based. It's like a grenade launcher, I think. But they are mainly meant for anti-air, and these are the kind of vehicles that you want to put like in really high positions, areas in which you know where maybe aircrafts may try to scout ahead to find good spots, or catch enemies in the crossfire. Sometimes when you're dealing with a smart tactical fighter, they'll just keep pumping out a few units every now and again to just kind of keep you distracted while they're actually moving maybe a large aircraft force in certain other areas where they know where your base is, but they're just going to try to go around you and do a little pincer maneuver or something. And it's probably good to have a couple of Wolverines in certain long-ranged areas. The downside of the Wolverine is it just doesn't quite do enough damage to aircrafts as it usually should. In certain other RTS games, especially that anti-air shooters were strictly only anti-air, and that made them a lot more dangerous towards aircrafts. Ground vehicles and infantry units would be able to slaughter these things, but as for aircrafts, they would just shred them up. I remember in Command and Conquer, there was a certain anti-air unit that could just kill almost a whole platoon of aircrafts if they tried to go in certain areas. And it was pretty nice in a way. Of course, that's because they had a probably larger unit cap lock and all, so they were able to bust out a lot more units than this game, I would assume. But there is still some brightness to this game, and there's going to be a lot more new stuff I can see that will be very interesting, especially Blitz. I won't talk too much about that. I'll leave Halo follower with that. I'm not going to touch that. That's some serious stuff. But other than that, I mean, if there is a way to make Wolverines more effective, maybe kind of do the same thing like the Kodiak, which we will get to in a second. The Kodiak is definitely as an artillery unit, and it has to set itself up to be more effective, kind of like with the Cobra and its little setup system. Kills vehicles instantly and all. What if the Wolverine had something like that? Maybe maybe it was able to do minor damage to air vehicles, but maybe if it managed to get itself set up in an area where it can repeatedly shoot, maybe because, most vehicles have to have cooldowns when they're firing that many weapons, that much artillery at an enemy force. And especially with tanks or other large vehicles, there is a cooldown time. They take time to load up another shell. However, maybe if certain units decide to get set up, maybe they can repeatedly shoot over and over again, making them a much more dangerous target for certain other units. And I think if there was a way to make the Wolverine just a little bit more effective in combat, this might be the way to do it. To kind of just get it set up in an area, if need be. They can still attack vehicles even when they're moving around and mobile, but they might be able to do even more damage if they stay in one spot and have a little setup area where they can just constantly throw a barrage. This would be very effective for dealing with large-scaled aircrafts of banshees or vampires or the vultures, just like especially the vultures. The vultures definitely they're a tough unit. They are a super unit aircraft, and they would take a lot of firepower to bring them down, unfortunately. And I would say maybe a good dozen, it would take a good dozen Wolverines to bring down just one of those guys. And because they just don't give enough kick. This thing would be, as a vulture, it would be super effective to just about every other unit. It's a super unit, mows down infantry, mows down vehicles, and even can mow down anti-air units. If you didn't have enough of them. And that definitely was a letdown. I would wish that there would be more of a risk. As just say, kind of, with, the Covenant busting out Scarabs. They are tough, hardcore vehicle units, but no doubt if one Spartan or a good dozen Marines managed to board that thing, it could be disastrous. You could have spent just a whole bunch of points for nothing. Though it does seem a little silly for a vehicle to just go down instantly, so who knows? Maybe there might be a balance, maybe not. I'm sure they will find some way to make sure that it's a little more effective, but in a way, that's the only change I think a Wolverine would need if it wants to be a more effective unit on the battlefield. Now moving on to the heavier vehicle units. The Scorpion, of course. Now the Scorpion doesn't look like it needs a whole lot of changes. I like the design of it. I like how it fires, how it's effective on the battlefield. And of course, its usual upgrade, the shell shooter, where it just does area damage to a certain area, which is nice. Not entirely sure if there's any kind of special abilities that this thing should have, other than it doesn't need to be set up in an area. It's practically a tank. It needs to be mobile all the time. It's not like the Cobra, not like the Kodiak. Doesn't need to do any of that. Just a heavy assault ground vehicle. Decent number of damage it does. And we don't know a whole lot about the upgraded version, the Grizzly tank. I'm betting money, however, that's probably going to be part of another leader class unit upgrade, I would assume. And I think that's about it on that one. Now, even though I believe the Cyclops, definitely nice little modifications it's gotten, I know that it's probably been moved to an infantry unit class now, I believe. But I will do a little bit of talk about it, and I know most of its abilities, pretty substantial. I'm very glad that they gave it a gun. That definitely needed to happen. Don't know if it has any melee capabilities, as I've used these guys out in the field and haven't seen any type of melee combat. Don't know if maybe that would be still kind of a thing, where it could switch. Unfortunately, its special ability is just jump. Like if it wants to get to a larger area or something, needs to get across the battlefield faster, it's got some sort of hydro jump. Which is kind of okay. It seems, I don't know, wasteful. If there was a better ability for this thing, maybe, switch between gun or combat, as this thing had actually decent combat in Halo 1, just downside was that it was a slow unit. It was mostly used for repairing stuff. and it only strictly had melee combat. Its only special ability was like grabbing shrapnel and then throwing it, and that was, I don't know, that seemed a little less effective. I mean, heck, even Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, the trolls had their switcher-uppers, and they could switch between throwing projectiles and then just going straight into combat, or taking a hold of certain items within the battlefield to give them maybe a deadlier combat ability, that sort of thing.
So yeah, fun fact about these attack trolls, they're actually carrying their toothbrushes, not giant maces, so these are actually the toothbrushes.
I think that is probably what this Cyclops might need to make it a little more effective in the battlefield and to probably make it a little more fun. Otherwise, it is just basic warfare. But we won't go too medieval on that because this is in the future. But thoughts, of course, nonetheless, of what the Cyclops has potential on, whether it be using distant-based weapons, ranged weapons, or combat. I would say maybe somewhere along the lines that would probably be suitable for a Cyclops. That we'll wait and see, however, and we'll trust 343 and Creative Assembly to make the wise calls, especially Creative Assembly, as they are masters of RTS. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, hoping they don't screw this up, but I'm sure they probably can at least get most of it. You can't be perfect. Can't be perfect. It's impossible to be perfect. And continuing on, a few more vehicles. Of course, the Kodiak. Kodiak, the artillery unit. And I don't think there's a whole lot of changes that need to be done to this thing. I think of how its design is almost completely perfect. As an artillery unit, it's a bit slow, and it, surprisingly enough, actually has an attack, even in mobility. It's got a little minigun on it, which was not... I was not expecting that, but I like it. I like that at least every vehicle unit has some sort of small defense. Even though that's not its strong suit attack, that's not what it's designed for, it still has some sort of ability to defend itself. And that's definitely something nice. Especially, that's the same thing with the elephant tank. The elephant tank is strictly kind of like a spawning unit. It spawns infantry, and it's pretty damn effective if you put it in certain areas to just be a distraction. So this is kind of the same thing. It had little miniguns too to kind of defend itself. Heavier armor and stuff, I think, is probably what the Kodiak could use if it had any upgrades or something. Just heavier armor, it can take more punishment, further range, so-called, but I don't think there's a whole lot of changes that need to be done for this bad boy. I think it's got just about everything it needs to be an artillery unit. Didn't see any Cobras, but I think either that's going to be part of maybe a different unit for a leader class, or maybe the Kodiak has been replaced. That the Cobra now is no longer a Cobra; it is now a Kodiak. Which is okay. The nice thing about the Kodiak is that it attacks from afar and does overhead damage, unlike the Cobra, which basically attacks in a straight direction, kind of like a tank, but just mostly like a vehicle killer and a harassing unit for fortresses and all. But the Kodiak will fit the bill nonetheless. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Cobras coming back. Depending on how it'd be used, however, other than that, maybe less likely of seeing it. Now that is just about done, most of all ground vehicles that we've seen in Halo Wars 2 have been just about finished up. Now I guess it's time to talk about certain units maybe that we want to see. And I'm not going to count special units as elephants. Elephants are special units, and especially gremlins, also another special unit. And I won't go into too detail on those guys, because I'll make a separate video on that one. Now, there was art designed for a Cougar APC unit. I always thought that maybe at some point they were going to try troop transports of some kind. Most likely they're probably going to still stick with Pelicans, probably. I would not mind maybe seeing a Pelican unit that has transport capability, but that's aircraft units, and we're not talking about those. We're talking about the APCs. They were going to make an APC unit, and maybe there is one in one of the other leader class designs. I always assumed that maybe in case you wanted to get troops at least a decent number of troops in a certain area to take over maybe a command module or something, as that there are lots of random Forerunner structures scattered all around the map. And no doubt even walking your troops in certain areas can be dangerous. Any scouting aircraft units would pick them off pretty quick, I'd say.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
Infantry units would not last very long out in the combat zone. And unfortunately, that would definitely require, even though like you want to send scouting units out there, if you got a smart player, they might send some scouting units themselves, and maybe even more deadlier ones, you know. And an APC is definitely a way to protect your infantry units, as infantry units are the only thing that you can use to actually take over certain command modules that are scattered around the map. Vehicle scout units are fast, but again, they're not troops. They don't configure and interact with the structures around them, unfortunately. That's infantry units. And of course, you know, if they make small cavern areas, Forerunner structured tunnels that obviously would not be suitable for vehicles, that would require infantry units to get through. An APC would be perfect for that job, to get your troops in a safe area, and no doubt an APC can challenge quite a few scouting units. They're usually probably not as fast, but they can do some damage to aircrafts and even small vehicle units. However, if they're coming across a tank, however, you can just go ahead and throw that right out the window. That's just not going to happen. But it's a thought nonetheless that maybe they might bring an APC, a troop transport of some kind, into the fold. Maybe in a different leader class unit. Maybe or maybe not. I would like to see one, depending on how much strategy they decide to put in some of these games. But obviously, if they're going to put higher cap locks, troop transports would be crucial for that matter. Other than that, I think I'll just wrap it up here. I think we've gotten most of our vehicle units in. No special units. We won't talk about special units. There's going to be a whole video on that. And I do want to try to make my videos at least a little bit shorter, as that the last one I did was way too long. So I'll keep it at that. We talked about most of all the ground units that we are expected to see, and even their upgraded versions as well. Other than that, Gelface continuing on with the Halo Wars thoughts and units. We'll be moving on to aircrafts and then special units, and I guess that might just about be it for the UNSC, and then I'll be probably moving on with the Covenant. Other than that, this is Gelface, catching you guys later on the flip side. Peace.